The Model 3 is the car that's really put Tesla on the map, and this revised version has been thoroughly updated. It's even more avant-garde inside, quieter to drive and better to ride in, plus there's more equipment despite the fact that the entry-level version has a useful price advantage over its rivals. All Model 3s are in this form sleeker and more aerodynamic, helping EV mileage figures that have been gradually improving, with the range of the dual motor version being class leading. So, your next executive saloon? Middle managers who are early adopters of new technology should form an orderly queue.
There's a lot to get used to behind the wheel of a Model 3, particularly in this updated version. For this enhanced design, Tesla's decided that it's no longer necessary to provide the column stalks that used to control gear shifting and the indicators. Forward or reverse motion is now activated via a swipe on the right-hand side of the central screen. That, as before, houses all the main drive instruments, while indicating is now dealt with by buttons on the left-hand wheel spoke. You'll want to know that the mainstream Model 3 product lineup isn't much different to before, though it's worth noting that EV driving range has improved significantly compared to the last time we tested this car back in 2019. Things kick off with an entry-level rear-wheel drive single motor version, using a battery size of around 58 kilowatt hours and a rear axle electric motor generating 242 brake horsepower, which means 62 miles an hour in 5.8 seconds en route to 140 miles an hour. Driving range at this point in the lineup remains pretty modest by segment standards, now rated at 318 miles. The pricier alternative is the mid-level long-range dual motor all-wheel drive variant we're trying here, which features a battery size of around 70 kilowatt hours. This more satisfying Model 3 is a second electric motor, the extra one mounted on the front axle, so creating the all-wheel drive format. Collectively, the two motors put out 346 brake horsepower, propelling the car really rather rapidly indeed to 62 miles an hour in 4.2 seconds en route to 145. Ignore these performance extremes and you might get somewhere close to this long-range dual motor variant's quoted driving range figure of 390 miles, which is segment leading. At the time of this test in early 2024, Tesla hadn't yet reintroduced the further lineup-topping performance version of this car, but we were expecting an updated version of that derivative to follow shortly, with a drive setup based on this dual motor model, but power uprated to around 450 brake horsepower. Our focus here, though, is on the two mainstream Model 3s, and in driving these, once you've adjusted to the new switchgear, the main thing you'll notice is the considerable improvement in rolling refinement. Tesla's also tweaked the suspension so the car feels less brittle over poorer surfaces, but the passive damping's still stiff enough to facilitate an engaging feel through the bends, where you're helped with excellent body control and an impressively linear feeling throttle. Tesla doesn't believe in offering the usual EV plethora of drive settings, and you can no longer alter brake regeneration. But there are selectable settings for acceleration response and the reasonably feelsome steering. What about EV stuff? Well, though there's quite a difference in battery size between the rear-driven and dual motor models, both charge in about the same time, 10 to 80% in about 25 minutes. Because the rear-wheel drive version's 58 kilowatt-hour battery can only charge at up to 170 kilowatt-hours, while this dual-motor variant charges at up to 250 kilowatts. As before, a major selling point lies with the Tesla supercharger network, which now features over 1,000 charging points spread across over 100 locations throughout the UK. Charging from home using a 7.4 kilowatt wall box from empty to full takes 9 hours 15 minutes with a 58 kilowatt hour rear driven model, or 12 hours with this 70 kilowatt hour dual motor version. It's a mark of Tesla's brand identity that even someone unacquainted with EVs would probably recognise this car's maker. They might perhaps be less likely to recognise it as a Model 3, though on closer inspection, the cues are quite distinct, though still very much EV orientated. Tesla says that the key difference with this evolved Model 3 lies with its sleeker exterior design, which sees sharper body lines and aero-optimised surfaces, reduce drag, improve wind noise and increase range. The changes made in those areas aren't really very evident here at the side, where the only real update lies with these redesigned wheels shod with range-optimised tyres and available in mainstream models in 18-inch form as standard, which is what we have here, with larger mileage-sapping 19-inch rims being optional. As before, this Model 3 is a saloon, breaking from the hatchback body configuration of other current Tesla cars and continuing to measure in at 4.7 metres long, fractionally more than a BMW 3 Series. From this profile perspective, you notice the short bonnet, facilitated by the skateboard-style chassis that locates the drivetrain and the batteries as low as possible in the car, enhancing interior space and lowering the centre of gravity. Tesla Arty will notice a lower waistline than that of the larger Model S, but an almost equally large glass area with even more glass overhead, courtesy of a standard two-piece panoramic roof, embellishing a high arching roofline that means you're unlikely to lose this car in a crowded parking lot. A mid-level crease line flows above the flush-fitting door handles with a shorter, higher one emphasising the rear haunches, plus a lower crease separates the wheel arches. As far as this Project Highland update package is concerned, though, the major changes feature here at the front, where the headlamps have been completely restyled, incorporating these slim daytime running light strips. These frowning headlights are now powerful enough to mean that there's no need for the separate front fog lamps that were previously fitted, so those have been removed, allowing the bumper to be reshaped in a quest for the greater aerodynamic efficiency that's so crucial for an EV. Helped by the low nose, the result is that this upgraded Model 3 now has the lowest absolute drag of any Tesla, just 0.219 CD. It was 0.23 CD before. And as before, unlike most of its rivals, Tesla sees no need for a front grille or any pretense at one. From almost any angle, this car continues to look more like a hatch than a saloon, including from the rear. It's certainly very Model S-like, and as with that car, Tesla's mounted the charging flap neatly in the near-side rear light cluster. Those clusters have also been restyled. They now feature super bright colours and a C-shaped graphic, and are integrated into a boot lid that now features Tesla lettering rather than the previous brand badge. But as usual, what's more important is what you can't see. Unlike the larger Model S, which is made almost entirely of aluminium, the Model 3 restricts its use of that lighter weight material to the bonnet, boot, doors and roof. The rest of the structure consists primarily of high-strength steel. Right, time to check out the cabin. When you get inside, you find yourself seated in an interior that's more minimalist than a Scandinavian loft, especially with this revised edition. If you happen to be familiar with the previous version of this car, the main changes you'll notice lie with the deletion of column stalks and the addition of this wraparound customisable ambient lighting strip. Plus, the steering wheel's new, the seats have been redesigned, and there's a revised centre console with aluminium highlights that flow up towards the dash with these dual wireless phone chargers. In other words, as with the outside, more is actually different here than initially meets the eye. Perhaps the biggest change, though, lies with the generally higher feeling of perceived quality. The old Model 3 felt a bit cheap compared to most of its segment rivals. Now it doesn't. As before, all the key controls lie on this enormous 15.4-inch landscape-orientated central touchscreen, including the climate functions, the lights, and potentially more dangerously, the wipers. This monitor now has more usable screen area thanks to a thinner bezel, but otherwise is much as before. There's the brand's familiar, curious insistence on displaying the usual driving instruments on the nearer third of this screen, and with this revised model, those instruments now include a right-hand side vertical touch strip to operate forward and reverse motion. As previously, the main part of the monitor display has a superb Google Earth navigation system, all the usual infotainment stuff and even arcade games. So, does this screen-dominated design approach really work? Well, if you're switching over from a more established maker, you still might find it a little hard to adapt. And compared to the cabin of a rival premium brand, the stripped-out interior vibe still doesn't exactly shout luxury. You'll also have to adjust to the way that the driving position sits you a little higher than the mid-sized saloon segment norm, but the lack of central transmission tunnel frees up a load of space for useful extra stowage compartments. Okay, time to take a look in the back. At first glance here, all seems good. There's certainly much more space than you get in a combustion engine model of this sort. Take a seat though and you'll find that the raised floor we just mentioned matched with low seat sets, the result being that you sit with your knees slightly higher than they perhaps would normally be. But once you adjust to this, you'll find that legroom isn't bad. One 6-footer can just about sit behind another, thanks in part to these slightly scalloped seat backs, though the fact that you can't slide your feet under the seat in front is something of a limiting factor. If you're seated behind the front passenger seat and there's no occupant in front, your legroom can be vastly improved because you can move forward said front chair using this centre screen, this 8-inch display, a freshly added feature for this revised model. This neat little monitor also alters fan speed, media sources, audio volume, Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, plus you can play games on it and Tesla will improve it with over-the-air updates, just like the front screen. Okay, finally, let's take a look at the boot. The capacity on offer here is 425 litres, which, to give you some segment perspective, is 24 litres bigger than a Hyundai Ioniq 6, but 45 litres less than you get from a BMW i4. Anyway, it's a good square usable space that will take up to 10 carry-on cases if you also include the room in the front compartment in the nose. Back here, buggies and golf bags will easily fit, and there are recessed areas on both sides, plus a deep well under the cargo base for the charging leads that could also take other small items you might not want sliding around the boot floor. We'll finish with a look at the frunk, or the fruit, or whatever you want to call it, up front in the nose. Now, it can't quite swallow suitcases like the one in the Model S, but its 117-litre capacity is probably good enough for a couple of small, squishy bags. And in summary, well, if you didn't already want a Model 3, the improvements made here may not be enough to convince you over alternatives from more established brands. But if you've always hankered after one of these, then this update package will please you very much indeed. You'd still have to like the cool, pared back image of the Model 3 to want one, and be forgiving of a few idiosyncrasies. But if none of that matters, then you'll find that what's on offer here is as significant as it's ambitious. You'd expect that from the car some said Tesla could never build, but it has, and you should try it.